Play Dead's Inside is a puzzle platformer that never once uses a word. No dialogue, no subtitles, no text logs, no narrator. Everything a player knows about the story comes from watching a nameless boy move through a hostile world. This absence of language is not a limitation the developers worked around, it's the design. And because of it, Inside raises a question worth taking seriously. What exactly does the game actually tell us, and where does the audience begin filling in the rest? The honest answer is that almost nothing is confirmed. What follows is an account of Inside's story as it is presented on screen, with the boundary between the depicted event and the audience interpretation kept explicit throughout. The game begins with a boy sliding down a rocky slope into a dark forest at night. He wears a plain red shirt, the only real color in an otherwise gray, desaturated world. Nothing establishes who he is or why he's there. The first thing the player learns is not narrative information, but a threat. Silhouetted men are loading something into the back of a truck nearby, and the boy hides from them instinctively as though he already knows what happens if he's seen. What follows is a sustained chase. Men with flashlights sweep the forest in search patterns. A dog corners him at a riverbank and forces a sprint into the water. Later, another patrol scans the water itself, meaning even submersion isn't fully safe. At one point, a wild boar joins the chase, and the boy uses its momentum to help force his way toward a factory-like structure, which becomes his way into the game's main setting. None of this sequence explains anything. The game never states who the men are, what authority they represent, why a child is being hunted, or what happens to him if he's caught. Mechanically, capture simply resets the player to the last checkpoint. It isn't depicted as a story event. Every explanation a viewer might supply here, that he's an escaped test subject, an orphan, a runaway, is inference, not information. The only fact the opening establishes is tone. This is a world where the boy is prey for reasons the game withholds. Once inside the facility, the game's mechanics shift from stealth evasion to something stranger. The boy encounters blank-eyed human figures moving in slow, repetitive patterns, unresponsive to anything around them. He finds a device, a helmet, informally called the Mind Hat by players, though the game never names it on screen, that lets him take direct control of these bodies. For a long stretch of the game, solving a puzzle means directing several of these figures together to press switches in sequence to form a human bridge, to trigger machinery too heavy for the boy alone. The environment itself becomes more clinical. The deeper he goes, laboratories, holding cells, observation, windows. There are no documents to read, no computer terminals with retrievable logs, nothing that functions as exposition. The player is left to read the space itself. One especially striking scene shows what happens to be a father and son at a counter, apparently buying one of these controlled bodies as though it were ordinary merchandise. It is one of the only images in the entire game, suggesting that this practice is normal, even commercial, within its world. But the scene appears once, briefly, and is never returned to or clarified, whether it's central to the world's logic or a single unsettling aside is left entirely open. Later, in a flooded section of the facility, the boy is seized by a monstrous, long-haired figure underwater. Players have nicknamed her the Siren, who drags him under. She attaches a device to him, and from this point, he can breathe underwater indefinitely and control the mind-controlled bodies without physically wearing the helmet. The game never explains what she is, why she does this, or what the device does beyond its visible effect. It happens as a single jarring event, not a gradual development, and like everything else in the game, it is shown without commentary. Eventually, the boy is captured, for the first time as a scripted event rather than a game over state, and brought to a chamber containing a large water tank. Inside it is a massive entity made of many human limbs and torsos fused into one moving mass. Playdead's own supplementary game materials identify this entity as the Huddle. Though the name never appears anywhere in the actual playthrough, players only know it from material outside the normal course of play. The boy is pulled into the tank and merges with it. From this moment, the player is no longer controlling the boy as an individual, but the Huddle itself. It smashes through the facility's walls and machinery while armed personnel try to stop it, moving through a prolonged, destructive sequence that breaks sharply from the stealth-based rhythm of the game's first half. The Huddle eventually breaks fully free, tumbles down a grassy hillside, and comes to rest in direct sunlight at the edge of what appears to be an ocean. A jarring visual shift from the muted, artificial lighting used everywhere else in the game. It stops moving, one arm outstretched toward the water. The screen fades, credits roll. Nothing further is shown or said. A second, harder one conclusion exists. Scattered throughout the entire game are a number of glowing orbs, easy to miss and often well off the main path. Finding and deactivating all of them unlocks a hidden route, accessible from a specific point earlier in the game in the cornfield section. This route leads through a long, quiet tunnel, a deliberate tonal departure from the urgency of the rest of the game, into a room containing computer monitors, a chair, and a device identified in the game's files as the Master Mind, connected by cables to the same system linked to the orbs found earlier. The boy locates a plug and pulls it. The device shuts down, the lights in the room go out, and the boy himself collapses into the exact same motionless posture used throughout the game for every mind-controlled body he has spent hours directing. The screen goes dark, and credits roll, distinct from the main ending's credits. Laid out plainly, here is the complete list of things inside does not tell its audience. The boy's name, the identity or purpose of the organization running the facility, the reason he was being hunted in the opening sequence, what the Huddle is or wants, what the siren figure actually is, why disabling the orbs specifically leads to the alternate sequence, and whether either ending, the escape to the shore or the plug being pulled, is meant to be understood as more true than the other. Both are reachable, mutually exclusive outcomes depending entirely on the player's completion of the orb collectibles. The game assigns no more weight to one than the other. Everything beyond this, that the Huddle was controlling the boy the whole time, rather than the reverse, that the story takes place in the same world as Playdead's earlier game, Limbo, that the ending represents oppression, rebellion, capitalism, or a critique of scientific ethics, all come from outside the game. These are theories built by players and critics working from the same ambiguous material laid out above, not facts the game itself confirms. Some of these readings are genuinely persuasive, and the discussion they've generated is itself a testament to how effectively Inside uses absence as a storytelling tool. But persuasive is not the same as confirmed, and the distinction matters. Inside tells a story with an unusual kind of honesty. It never pretends to explain more than it shows. A boy runs, is hunted, learns to control others as he himself may be controlled, and reaches one of two ambiguous ends. That is the whole of it, as depicted. The temptation with a game like this is to resolve the discomfort of not knowing by settling on an interpretation and treating it as settled fact. But the more accurate, and arguably more interesting approach is to sit with what the game actually withholds. Inside isn't a puzzle with a missing piece waiting to be found. The absence is the piece.